I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, there are two very different legislative models for where Florida moves in the future with gambling. One model in the House would open it up to many different in many different directions, including destination resorts, and the other very much limits it to maybe renewing the compact with the Seminoles, just the banked cards portion of that. Let's discuss that. What's going to happen?
The House is taking a really expansive approach to this, which is sort of interesting because the House traditionally has not wanted any part of expanded gambling. But the House Majority Leader, Dana Young, rolled out a bill maybe a month or so ago that would allow, as you said, a couple of resort casinos in Miami-Dade and Broward County. It would allow slot machines at dog tracks in Palm Beach County and over in Southwest Florida. It would do a bunch of things like this. And right now, it doesn't look like that sort of expansive approach is gonna carry the day in the end.
I read on your service that there may be a lot of studying of that, or not much until the very end in the House, until the very end of session.
The House had a 4-hour workshop last week on gambling issues, and that was, part of the discussion. The Senate is taking a far more measured approach, if you will, in that they are looking. There's negotiations going on with the Seminole tribe to extend this portion of the compact, which was a deal that was reached several years ago with the Seminole tribe. What's up for discussion is, as you said, banked card games, which in layman's terms, stuff like blackjack.
Right.
And the Seminole tribe pays the state more than $100 million a year for the exclusive rights to offer those games at their casinos. And so that portion of there's an overall agreement as well, but that portion of the agreement expires in July. So there's some time pressure here in terms of reaching some sort of agreement or what's going to happen with this Seminole deal. The other thing that's sort of interesting about Dana Young's bill is that if it were to pass, it would kind of blow up the entire agreement with the Seminole tribe. There are provisions built into that agreement that would basically protect the Seminoles being able to have those exclusive rights to banked card games. And there's also limits on where slot machines can go in the state. Dana Young's bill would kind of blow all that up. The bet is that the state could get enough money from these other sources to more than make up for what the Seminoles are paying. But it's a sort of a whole nother aspect of this discussion.
Well, I think maybe the Senate President has said on previous occasions that, well, he's not counting on the revenue from the Seminole Compact or from gambling, period.
The Senate President, Andy Gardner, is no fan of gambling. He's made that clear many, many times. And, he did say before session that, even if the Seminole Compact isn't extended, it's not going to be a big deal with him. But Rob Bradley, who is the Senate Regulated Industries Chairman, told us last week that he is in ongoing negotiations with the tribe. And I think the Senate's probably going to look at this and go, do we really want to give up that much money or let that much money fall off the table? Probably not. So there are negotiations going on with that. But sort of an interesting political side note, at least in my mind, is the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, which have typically been opposed to any sort of gambling expansion. They've come out in support of extending this Seminole Compact. And I think that may be the play in the end, which is go ahead and extend what we have, keep bringing in the money from the Seminoles, but don't do anything more. And I think that's where those groups, as well as maybe the Senate, are heading, which is just sort of keep it status quo.
Okay, moving to another subject. Last year, the legislature passed a law legalizing the use of a non-euphoric type of marijuana for treatment primarily of childhood seizures, and it was called, or it is called, Charlotte's Web. That law was passed, but it's still not available. and it's not available because of various legal challenges to its administration, how it would be presented to people. Various people file suits against each other and so forth, nurseries, etc. It's up again in the legislature, and Senator Bradley, whom you mentioned, is active again. He filed that legislation last year in the Senate. Where are we?
I think there's a lot of frustration with some of the legislators about this new form of medical marijuana not getting off the ground. They kind of rushed to pass it at the end of last year's session, and a lot of them rallied around it, which was a difficult lift for some of the particularly Republican legislators to put their names on something that deals with medical marijuana. So they're kind of frustrated at this point that it still has not actually hit the market. The Department of Health is in charge of putting together rules to essentially a regulatory framework to carry out the law. And the department tried last fall to do that, and they got challenged by some nurseries, and the department lost. So they had to go back to the drawing board, hold hearings, redo it again. They have put up another proposed rule, and it's been challenged by three different challenges that are now pending. So even if those challenges go ultimately in favor of the department, we're still looking out a few months probably before the product could ever get to some of these patients. So the Senate has started moving forward with legislation to try to basically kickstart this whole process and take away some of this uncertainty that's going on in the rules process and move forward with it in law. The Senate does not appear to have any interest in expanding to more traditional forms of medical marijuana. I mean, what was passed last year has a low THC level, which, at least in theory, doesn't get its users high. And there's been some proposals to try to go to a more full-blown medical marijuana this year, but the legislature doesn't seem to have any desire to do that at this point.
Can you imagine the lawsuits if we were talking about a more generalized form of medical marijuana?
Well, part of the issue has always been, I think, that some people would like to see the framework for this limited form be able to be used if and when Florida ever moves to a more full-blown form of medical marijuana. So while this limited form may not be as expansive as people would want, it's kind of a foot in the door to what could be a very lucrative industry for some people. So there's a lot of fighting that's been going on.
So this is kind of a precursor fight.
Well, it could be, and there's discussion of a possible constitutional amendment again in 2016 to try to pass full-blown medical marijuana. It only failed by 2 percentage points in 2014.
Thank you, Jim. For more news about Florida politics and government, visit the Advances section of our website.